love this experience. I genuinely like my teachers, and but if you do run into this, you have to realize that you can do well no matter what. So even if you don't like your teacher, you can still get an A, or you can still go through the class and you can still learn the material. The teachers are there to facilitate the information, but you don't always need that. And sometimes it's also good, it's a good learning experience just for you to learn how to learn on your own. And also, there's something else. Realize that your teachers are just normal people, and they go through a lot of things in their lives, and also like your parents too, if you're a kid, I guess. Realize that everyone's a person, and they all have their faults, but they also have like a lot of good traits, and you should learn from the good side, not the bad side.
Yeah, I would agree with what people said. If you don't like the teacher because like they don't teach, then what you should do is try to like form study groups with other people in your class, and maybe people in the same class that's taught by a different teacher, and try to learn from them. And if you don't like the teacher because he's too hard, then well, that's a great way to like challenge yourself, I guess. Basically, just like try to find the positive things, not the negative things. And yeah, even if you don't like the teacher, like try to like them, because then that way they'll like you back.
Also, a tip that I would recommend is that like before winter break, you should give your teachers, like your current teachers, a gift or something, because if you wait until the end, first of all, like it doesn't affect your first semester grade, but also they will like you for the rest of the second semester as well. So just like get them like chocolate or something, and it will help.
And make sure you write your name on the chocolate.
Also, try to appreciate your teachers, because a lot of teachers, even if they're horrible, or if you think they're horrible, if you think they're hard, they actually do want you to succeed. Like, none of your teachers want you to fail. None of your teachers are like, oh, I'm gonna, like, especially pick on this kid today. So I think you have to go into the mindset thinking that people are trying to help you and not hurt you.
And yeah, I'll just add on a little bit too. I find that if I take courses where the subject of the course is like a subject that I really like, then it's more likely that I'll like the teacher too. There's a correlation between how much you like the subject and how much you like the teacher. So if you really don't want to have a teacher that you might dislike, then you could take courses like that you know you will like just because of the course material. And there are some teachers that are so good that no matter what they teach, they will teach extremely well. Yeah, you should take those courses too.
I think maybe just dealing with bad teachers is kind of as practice maybe in the workforce. You have to tolerate some people. People can be mean, or people can be frustrated too. But people have different sides to them. Try to get your good side, because then they'll be nice to you. Everyone has a good side. You just need to know how to get onto it.
Okay, the next question. What are some ways to reduce student stress before tests?
All right, I'll answer first. Well, it's kind of hard to address stress before a test, because the more you focus on the test, the more stressful you get. The more stressful it is, and the more you focus on reducing stress, the more stressful it gets. So try not to think too hard about it. Just do a lot of practice the days before a test, and then the night before the test, just get a good night's sleep. And then the next day, just like face it.
I feel like Something I will chant in my head to reassure myself is that like, you study for this. You are prepared. Why are you worried? You are prepared, you study, you put in all this effort, you can do this. And that's something you just need to say. You did the preparation, so you are prepared. But I think usually during the test, I'm not actually focused on like the end result. Like I think I'll get a B or a C. I'm like just focused on doing the calculations and then writing the answer out. Like I feel like you just have to be kind of focused on the task, and you have to try not to worry too much about the outcome. You did your best, and that's what it is. A bad theory isn't gonna wreck you. It's alright.
Looking back, I feel like each test, like specifically, they aren't a big deal at all. But I only get stressed out the night before when if I like didn't keep up with the homework or like I don't know the material. But if you don't know the material, just spend like an hour the night before like reviewing it and memorize the formulas. And then the next day, like it should be in your head, so there's no need to worry or study more. I find that if I study the day of the test, I don't actually remember anything besides maybe like one formula that I crammed in like a minute before. So I think that just study for at least an hour the night before, and then during the test, just focus on the problems, and afterwards, like only worry about the result after you get your test back, and then figure that out later.
I feel like taking a test is a lot like running a race or just like doing some sports, because I feel like you have to be rested, you have to eat well and feel good before you take the test. I think definitely prepare well. I think if you do the preparation, you won't feel that much anxiety because you know the material. And even if they're tricky questions, you just have to have confidence in yourself. Just think of it as, think of your test as like some performance or anything like that. Maybe if you do like a violin or like piano or something, think of it as like, oh, you prepared, you like studied all your music or something, and like all you have to do is just do, like show them what you know. So just think of it as like a performance, and just do your best and practice beforehand.
Yeah, I think if you're prepared, then it shouldn't be stressful at all. Maybe you'll feel a little nervous, but you shouldn't feel anxiety. I think you should study like well ahead of time, like 2 days before. The day before the test, if you feel like you don't know a lot of things, then review it again for, like Sabrina said, like an hour, maybe 2 hours, but don't cram through the night, because I've actually found like it's way better to get a good night's sleep than to cram through the night, and studies have shown that cramming doesn't actually work. It works if you do like 1 or 2 hours, it's much more helpful than, if you do 1 or 2 hours and then get a good night's sleep, it's much more helpful than spending like 5 hours and like staying up till like 3 a.m. to do it.
I have a few tips also. When you're studying for the test, I would recommend do practice tests. Many teachers will give out practice tests beforehand. So you should do those more than a day before the test, because that gives you time to go to the teacher and ask specifically, what did I do wrong with these questions? That's especially important with STEM subjects. And also, try to know your week's schedule beforehand, so that you can know when all of your tests are, like which days you might have to spend more time studying. And also, if you know for sure that you're going to have to pull an all-nighter for the same class or for a different class, then schedule that all-nighter strategically, so that like if you have the test on day 3, then have a really long night between day 1 and day 2, and not between day 2 and day 3, so that you can recover your sleep for the test.
If your teacher doesn't give out review problems or you already did them all, you can always go back and do the problems from your homework. Or you can always Google. There's a lot of things you can Google. That's what I've done with physics before. And okay. I was going to say something else, but I forgot. Sorry.
Also, if you're in the middle of a test and you realize that you don't know anything, don't give up because chances are there's probably going to be a curve. So just like do all the problems and don't just stop in the middle.
Also, don't turn in your test first. Always check your answers. But also realize that the test is, like, if you don't do well in that test, make sure you do well in the next test. And just, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what Sabrina said. If you realize that you actually aren't, like, if you're in the test and you realize that you aren't prepared at all, then you should still have like a little bit of preparation. Like maybe you know some like formulas, especially for math and like physics classes or maybe computer science. A lot of times for the questions, you can get some partial credit. So a lot of people, like if they feel like overwhelmed during the test, they'll just give up and leave everything blank. But you can actually get like a lot of partial credit by just writing down a formula and pretending like you know something. So that's a really good strategy if you find yourself in that situation. But of course, try to not ever find yourself in that situation by just preparing ahead of time. And if you don't know what is going to be on the test, you can just ask your teacher. Of course, they won't tell you exactly what will be on the test, but they'll tell you in general what topics you should know. And often teachers will publicly say this to the entire class a few days or a week before the test so that the students can learn. And when the teachers do give that information, like actually like take a note or take a picture of their slide or something so that you can go through every single item. Because some teachers will give review sheets and some teachers won't. So you always have to make sure you know what will be on the test and what to prepare.
In fact, for math and physics tests, I would recommend you, right when you get the question sheet with all the questions, you should write down all of the formulas that you know that you think you will forget soon. So that you sort of have your own formula sheet before you do your questions. That way you've got that out of your head, so you have more mental space to calculate whatever you need to calculate, and you know that you won't forget the important equations and that you won't accidentally use a different variable in the equations or misinterpret the equations.
Okay, so like if you do encounter a problem you don't know, don't let panic consume you. Try to kind of suppress your fears and just move on. Actually, just do the parts that you know. Kind of test-taking strategies right here. Do the easy parts, get all the points that you can, and then show your work. Try your best to get some points.
Yeah, I agree with Julia. If you don't know how to solve a problem, you should just move on, because sometimes, the people who write the tests, they are humans, so they're not out to make the test as hard as possible, and because of that, there are some questions that will basically give the answers to previous questions. So that's a test taking strategy. Like later questions might tell you the answers to previous questions. There's something else I was going to say.
Yeah, so don't think your grades define who you are, okay? I feel like the reason why people might be so stressed about their tests is because they really want to do well in school, and that's something that is really wonderful, honestly. But in the end, you kind of have to step back and look at the big picture. Like when you're like 20 years in the future, where you're working in the workforce, it doesn't matter. You get a B or a C or maybe like a D on this test. Like just do your best, okay? Don't not study, but just don't put too much pressure on yourself. Be willing to accept your flaws and mistakes as what they are.
Okay, so I remember. When you're taking a math test, sometimes you'll find out like, hey, I remember this concept wrong. And then you might, for example, for me, there were a bunch of awkward times where I was taking a math test and the question was like, take the derivative of like sine squared x or something, and I forgot what sine squared x meant. I didn't know if it was sine of x squared or like sine x and then the whole thing squared. And then so I solved the question both ways, and then I looked at the answer choices, and then that way I knew which one was correct. So sometimes it's interesting. You can learn from taking a test.
Also, use every test as a learning experience. A lot of tests are similar, like Unit 1 is, Unit 2 is similar to Unit 1, so if you didn't do as well on Unit 1, like maybe like the test structures will be similar, so you'll pretty much know like the structure of the test, so that will probably reduce your anxiety. And also, if you don't do well, you should go back and look at your answers and figure out what you did wrong. And a lot of the times, those, like the things you did wrong might be like, you might not do the same things wrong next time, so I think it's definitely good to figure out what you did wrong and learn from that.
Also, I think if you do badly on one test, then what you should do is not just forget about it. First of all, like go over the problems that you missed to learn from it, but then also think about why you did badly on that test. Was it because you didn't prepare enough, or you prepared the wrong things, or like you didn't get enough sleep so you couldn't remember things? So try to think about what, like the reason why you didn't do well on that test so that you can improve for future tests. Okay, so we'll move on now. The next question is okay, this might be more geared towards parents, but how do you make kids interested in reading? How do you make your reading, how do you read better quality books if all you read in 9th grade is adventure books?
Okay, I would say advice for reading higher quality in general is to subscribe to some magazines. Ben and I in middle school, we were reading Time magazine and The Economist and some other like national magazines that talk about current events and technology. So these were things we were interested in. So because we were interested in these magazines, then we liked to read them, and that allowed us to gain better vocabulary, to read better quality reporting, better quality readings. So if you want your kid to become more interested in reading, then make sure it's something that it's about a subject that they are already interested in. Because first, they have to like the content before they can like the form or the difficulty.
I think, yeah, I have to agree with Brian. I think in 9th and 10th grade, my dad subscribed to the New York Times as a way for my brother and I to have a sense of awareness of what's going on in the real world. Reading news is important, but I don't want to contradict the person who wrote this question, but reading fiction isn't all that bad. There are studies that say that reading fiction gives your children the ability to sympathize with people, and that's a good thing. But I would say if they like fiction, tell them to read some classics, like Canterbury, Moby Dick. That's what I read, and I'm a person who likes fiction.
I'm not like a parenting expert, so I wouldn't know exactly. But I think that like if you want your kids to read, they have to want it themselves. And so you can encourage it, but even if they end up not being interested at all, like it's okay. They don't have to like to read to like do well in life or whatever. And so I think that just like if they want magazines, you can subscribe or like recommend websites, newspapers. But if they don't want to, don't force it, and maybe later they will grow into it.
I 100% agree with Sabrina. I think like reading fiction or adventure books is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's good that at least they like to read and they're interested in like just adventure, I guess. I think as a child, I think I read a lot, and I think that has definitely helped me become the person I am. And I think, especially adventure and fiction, a lot of like Asian parents look down on that, but I think it actually opens like a child's mind, and I think especially at this age, I think that's one of the most important things you can do for your child is to like foster their curiosity and foster their creativity. I think you shouldn't force them to do anything they're not interested in, and the more you do it, I feel like the more they'll push. So if you do want them to read like harder novels, maybe you can just be like, oh, I got this from Amazon, and it's like some really pretty cover or something. I don't know, but like you can just like try to make it more interesting, and if they're not interested in it, you don't have to push too hard, because I think they will grow into it.
Yeah, I think one thing that as a parent you can do is try to talk with kids about the books they're reading in school, because those books are definitely going to be high quality, or else the school wouldn't like have them read it in the English class. So if you can like talk to them about the book, then that might make them more interested in the book, because it would really make them think about like the deeper meaning of the book. Because a lot of times in English class, like you view reading the book as a job and you don't actually really enjoy it. One thing that I found that really helps when reading a book in English is to actually pretend like I'm just reading it for fun, because then I actually enjoy it. So a lot of my favorite books were actually required readings from high school. So I think if you're a parent, then you can try to get them to be more interested in the book by talking to them about the book, and then it might turn from something that they view as like a job to something that they actually think about at home, and that they might enjoy better. And then once a person starts enjoying like high quality writing, like classics, then it's very easy for them to like move to other high quality classics. Yeah. So I think for like Shakespeare and like really hard works like that, it might be harder, but definitely for like books like A Tale of Two Cities, like more recent books, 19th century, like Victorian novels, those are all really good. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. How did you control yourself from spending too much time on video games and non-school related fiction book reading? Okay, so first again, I think fiction book reading is, once again, I want to say is like not a bad thing, right? A lot of really famous novels are fiction. So yeah, fiction book reading is not a bad thing. Spending too much time on video games, does anyone want to answer that?
Wait. I just want to say all these are social activities. These are ways for your children to bond with their friends and honestly gives them joy. And so let them do a bit of it. Not excessively, like if they're not sleeping or if they're totally ignoring schoolwork, but let them have fun.